Hi, welcome everyone to the Southeast Michigan chapter. Can you see my screen well, or is it showing a display?
You have a presentation mode, but if you can't,
Okay,
if it's kind of goofy to figure out. If you can't figure it out, don't worry about it.
all right.
There's a little button on your PowerPoint that says presentation mode that you have to click off. I mean, presenter mode that you have to click off.
Okay, so I'm going to stop presenting for just a minute. Obviously, you can tell that I don't, I think I stopped. Okay, I did stop, right? All right, so just give me 1 second to get that going. Or if not, Dave, if you want to just pop it up.
Yeah, I'll do it for you right here. Just give me a second.
We don't want to bore people with my presentation over Zoom. Okay, fantastic.
It's coming out here shortly. There you go.
Great, thank you. So welcome everyone to the Southeast Michigan chapter, November chapter meeting, November 18th. We're excited to have you here. It's been great to get a chance to talk to everybody prior to the meeting. Our speaker tonight is going to be Dave Mantica, and it's going to be an exciting presentation about change and digital technologies and the Internet of Things, and he'll speak to it more in just a moment, and so we're very excited about that. Advance to the next slide. And so we're going to start out tonight. We're really just giving an overview about our chapter and the Southeast Michigan chapter and what we're about. And to do that, we're going to introduce, his name is Brian Daly. Brian, do you want to take it away?
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Daly. Been a member for probably a good year now. And just to talk a little bit about the chapter, our vision is to create and grow the local community for business analysis professionals. We bring in speakers from all across the country and all across the world. We network locally and globally at the same time. And our mission is to help develop and maintain the standards for the practice of business analysis and for the certification of the practitioners, which should be most of us. Next slide, please. And there is a $25 annual membership fee. We do also, there is a per meeting chapter fee, but that is free for chapter members. The reason we have some of these, or we have the annual membership and charge for the chapter meetings for non-members, it costs money to have these events. Just for the if we have it on site, there's refreshments, locations, and help for our speakers. Helps provide with the chapter management and logistics and setting up the Zoom and the emails and all that good stuff. And it does provide a voice and a face for the members by having those who do opt in to participate, and by people putting the proverbial skin in the game, the people who are committed to be a part of the chapter and we can develop the needs and programs to help them out. So next slide, please. Thank you. And just a little bit on the certifications. From IIBA, we have the ECBA, which is the entry-level certification, goes up to the CCBA for the people who've had a little bit of the work experience, but not as much as, or more than the ECBA, less than the CBAP. The CBAP is the gold standard for our community. And we also have other certifications like this Certified Business Data Analytics certification, the Agile certification. They just come out with the cybersecurity certification. There's information at the link about all the certifications. And if you're thinking about getting certified, now is a great time to do that. Between November 1st and December 31st, IIBA is refunding 20 or 25% of the exam fees if you take them before the end of the year. So if you're thinking about it, now's the time to do it. And we do often have study groups as a chapter. There's a structure to it. We discuss the theory and the concepts behind them. We go through illustrations and cases for exercise and discussing it. And then we have the exercises and simulations to reinforce that. And then afterwards, there's the reflection to discuss our understanding of it and make sure everyone understands what's going on.
Great. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Yeah, the chapter has so much to offer. When everybody gets an opportunity, go out to our website and be able to see some of the classes and some of the exciting new events that are coming up, as well as you can see the information about tonight's speaker, David Mantica. And I am very, very excited to introduce him. I had an opportunity to meet him earlier this year, and in doing so, hanging out with him during a day, during one of a BA day, I really found out that he has such a breadth of knowledge. I mean, not only just being an excellent speaker, but just his number of years of experience. I mean, 25 years in consulting and services and training opportunities. Uh, he has a business that he just recently sold, and he took it from 1.2 million to 13 million in 2013. He's part of SoftEd. He's currently the VP of it and the general manager for SoftEd US, which is a great training opportunity. And there's training services, and we have Gina on here tonight, who's actually one of the people that trains through SoftEd. And so they provide great training opportunities, as well as he provides coaching services. He's in the Raleigh-Durham area. And I encourage you to reach out to him to learn more about training opportunities and what he offers, and just to meet him, because he's a great guy overall. And so, as part of an opportunity that we had at this chapter is that SoftEd is offering until the end of the year a discounted rate on some of the online training classes. So it's offering business analysis, agile, DevOps, software testing and training. I've taken spent some time looking at the materials, as well as have taken a class with Gina, and it's really quality material. I really encourage you to check it out. Link to the calendar, and as well as the awesome registration code to get that discount. And David can speak more to that himself. I don't think I could do it justice. And so with that, I proudly hand it over to you, David, to tell us all about DX and change management and the Internet of Things. We're very excited to hear about this.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and stop that share. We're going to share a new share, which is the slides for the presentation. Thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate your time. Excited to jump into this topic. Now, I'm an economist by education, a product manager by experience, and a business owner. So when you hear me talk about this topic, you're going to hear a lot of business side orientation. I'll talk a little bit of the tech, but mostly on the business side. And from my perspective as business analysts, you really have to dig into the understanding of the business models, the effect on business processes, the understanding of the overall value that IoT brings. So you need to know enough about the tech so you can have pertinent discussions and you can understand what's being told to you, but your value is going to be in showcasing what you can do with what this technology and this ecosystem can provide. So we're going to talk about what is IoT, what is DX. DX is digital transformation. We'll talk about this digital disruption and tie it back to something called adaptive challenges. And I'll connect this into something called adaptive leadership as well. High-level state of IoT. We'll talk a little bit about ML, machine learning, DL, which is deep learning, AI, and how those kind of fit together. We'll talk on the human capital side, the impact to us that IoT and digital transformation is having. And then I'll end it with how do you handle transformation and disruption. So this is a combination of understanding what IoT is, but also the change management aspect of it, both from a business perspective and from an individual's perspective. And when we start thinking about this, you really start thinking about the impact. So marketing. When you think about IoT, marketing has been significantly impacted all around underlying automation systems within marketing. The fact they can see you doing things, and they know when you do this, and they know when you do that, and they can very much tailor and prescribe specific content to you based on what you've done in the past. And so this marketing automation and IoT on marketing has been gigantic. And this isn't new. That's been going on for a little bit of time. I think you'll see in this IoT world in cars really start to rapidly increase as sensor technology and processors on sensors get stronger and more reliable. And then the bandwidth aspect, like this big push for 5G, is now going to help from a bandwidth perspective to begin feeding our cars data so that when you're driving down the highway, your sensors will start picking up if there's a traffic jam ahead. You don't just have to look at or trust manual enter stuff on Waze. It will actually automatically do it. It'll see that your gas is down and point you to 3 gas stations. It'll let you know about weather conditions. And it's amazing what some of the smart technology connected in cars is going to be able to do. Manufacturing, GE is one of the best case studies associated with it. This is they make their transition from a hardware company, a creator of appliances and other equipment, to a software company, a middleware company around IoT specifically. And this is all around the self-healing machine, the machine that can actually send a notification out to the repair company saying it's time for my current maintenance on this product, it's time for my current maintenance on that product. Legal is getting blown away because of this. And legal and IoT is around precedent. So when you really look at lawyers, what lawyers do is they look at precedent, they process precedents to make arguments. And then they kind of adjust precedent based on current situations, cultural situations, legal ramifications. But that research is what first, second, third year lawyers do. Well, IoT, it can do all of that research. You don't need a human being to do that research anymore. And that the biggest one that we've seen the most impact on is health and wellness. You have digiceuticals now. So instead of taking a pill, you can use a digital application. You have wearable devices where Apple Watch is going now with the O2 sensors and some of the sleep sensors that are going on, the Fitbit, some of the sensing that's going on there. But what I like to really dig into really quickly, and if you had some time to dig into this, it's wild, is on the COVID side, this whole contract tracing world is all IoT-based data collection and then looking at the patterns of people's activities. But even stronger than that is the solid waste analysis. So when you look at COVID can affect the stomach, it can affect the lungs as well. And a lot of times it happens to us before we actually show symptoms. But we have it in our system, and when we have excretion that goes through the sewage system, you can actually test raw sewage to see if that sewage has COVID. And so now they're creating these analysis processes where they can determine where that sewage came from so they can test the specific building, especially on college campuses. So they'll catch it, they'll see that there's a potential case of COVID in a specific building, a dormitory, then they'll do the whole testing of everybody in that dormitory and be able to catch people before they become symptomatic to the point that they can spread. So this is some wild stuff. And I think that's what gets really exciting, but it also can be very disconcerting because it's going to significantly impact, how we work. It's also going to significantly impact the things that we work on. And as George talks about, look at what George is saying, cybersecurity and business analysis. Why are you doing that? AI. Why are you talking about AI? Why are you talking about data, doing storytelling with data? Well, you're doing that because digital transformation is forcing this position to change how it views the world, the things that it finds important. And we're really going to dig into that. So ultimately, what is IoT? So think about your eyes and think about your ears. Your ears don't hear, your brain hears. Your eyes don't see, your brain sees. Your eyes pick up light waves and then processes them into electrical impulses that your brain interprets. Your ears pick up audio sound waves that your brain ultimately interprets. So basically what you got is you have a sensor. And the smaller and the more powerful processors get, the smaller and crazier places you can put these sensors. And these sensors are gathering data. And it's basically taking something that was physical, that was non-electronic, and basically turning it into an electronic type of signal. Once you can do that, you can then store that. And that's something you have unstructured data and structured data. And a lot of IoT is unstructured data, but now we can even parse, segment, and manage unstructured data. But basically, IoT allows you to start seeing real-time data in places that we could never, ever see it before. So wow, I could put an IoT sensor on my refrigerator, in my microwave. I can put it on my bathtub. I can put it anywhere. But that's some of the stuff that we have to take a step back on, because really what we have to start thinking through now is it's why? Why do we want to collect that data? What's the rationale? What are we going to learn from it? How is it going to help us? How's it going to help us make money? How's it going to help us save money? How is it going to help us manage regulatory requirements? So when you start getting into IoT, you're really going to start uncovering a new way of thinking, a way of thinking around system thinking, a way of thinking around value analysis, and a way of thinking around something called adaptive leadership. And we'll get into that concept of adaptive leadership here in a little bit. But the key element from a technology standpoint is the better processors get, the smaller a sensor gets, that allows us to put these sensors in a whole bunch of different places. And then you're gathering that data, and as you gather that data, the more powerful the processors are to be able to process and churn that data using algorithms to be able to start looking for patterns and repetition. And we'll talk through that as well. So there are some barriers on the technology front, as we were talking about at the beginning of this presentation. But the key element to start thinking about as a business analyst is why? Why would I do it? What's the value that's going to be extracted? What am I going to learn? And how is that learning going to help my business going forward? And is there a possibility that my business could be disrupted by somebody else doing this? So even if I don't see somebody doing it, is my business going to be disrupted because of that? So when we think about IoT, it's not just turnkey. It's no longer, I can't just buy something. Like when voice over IP occurred, Cisco created these voice over IP boxes, and I could just buy a Cisco box. I could throw away on my phone system and magic, presto, changeo, I have voice over IP. But you know, that world has almost completely dissipated. The plumbing of the internet, for all intents and purposes, is there. And now it's a matter of what we're doing on top of that. So really what this becomes, it becomes a system. It takes a village. An ecosystem is a village. And this is what causes some of the challenges, because now we have to think about the parts and pieces that's going to put the whole thing together, and then how those parts and pieces are going to have to evolve as I try to go deeper and deeper in where I collect data, and I try to get more and more data that I can use to make the machine smarter and smarter. So here you have to be thinking about your processors, the strength and the size of the processors. You got to be thinking about your storage. And as you move more and more to cloud storage, how much storage can you get? The size increases, the price per bit stored decreases exponentially. And then there's magic in that, because people don't realize how inexpensive it is to store so you can spend a ton of money. I mean, it's hilarious. And, you know, Apple will charge you $10 a month to store a terabyte of data on the cloud. That costs them next to nothing. The margin on that is absolutely incredible. And as business people, what we want to do is we want to start creating margin magic. And what I mean by margin magic is we want to find ways to sell things that people can't decompose it to come up with the cost of each piece, so that when they do that, they can fight back and start battling over pricing. When you have margin magic, is that there's impossible for them to truly understand the cost, so you can charge relative value. I can charge what people will pay for it regardless of what the cost is. And the problem, like in my business and training, oh my gosh, you all know, you know how much instructor costs, you know how much books cost, you know how much Zoom costs. You can decompose it and break it down and, you know, just drive me down to the lowest price possible, where I'll still willing to do it, and I'll get a sharecropper type of, you know, return, or a grocery store type of return. So this is why this can become very powerful. Then you have your data management and your data control efforts. And this is where you get into that structured data. So you get into tools like Hadoop and other technology tools. Then you have the data analysis skill sets that we're talking about, and the data science skill sets. You have the teaching tools and ML and AI like TensorFlow from Google. And then ultimately, you got to be looking at your bandwidth, your networking, and your security. And security, as George was talking about at the outset, you know, becomes very important, because here's the skinny. There's always going to be this cost benefit. Security is seen as an overlay in a lot of cases. It's seen as excess. It's like, oh, I got to add security. It's going to cause me this much more aggravation. But the problem in IoT is that if your data gets the least bit corrupted, you know, it throws the system off completely. And one of the primary examples of this happened about 8-9 years ago, to the country of Iran when their centrifuges were hacked, and they weren't able to process their uranium appropriately. They actually blew up one of their reactors because they were given corrupt data, and they didn't understand that the data was corrupted. So there's things that you can do in this world of IoT that makes the cybersecurity element that George was talking about at the beginning of this presentation so important. So we got a little bit of the tech, and now I'm going to go back to the disruption itself. So what this means is that no business model is safe. No business itself is safe. Our skills, the skills that we have, become completely more tenuous, and what we have to learn and how we have to learn it. And this is why we need to start thinking about this, because we really have to start evolving ourselves and our abilities to process all of these changes. And it's not having a plan, it's about planning on a consistent basis. And you're going to hear me throw some agile things at you, but not in an agile context, just in an overall work context. So taking a step back, let's first look at this. More money is being spent on technology at the CMO, CRO level than at the CTO, CIO level. So there's been this movement, which means more money means more jobs, more opportunity. The marketing side is getting more and more technical. And so there's opportunities there as it relates to business analysis, as it relates to data analysis, and even as it relates to straight IT, and helping understand how these systems are going to front face. And then as we look at this in more depth, we start looking at some disruptions. Entertainment, Netflix is one of the best disruptors. And they use data to come up with the topics that will keep us coming back. They look at our habits of watching. They now know that the tipping point is 4 episodes. If you get beyond 4 episodes, you'll binge the show. If you don't get beyond 4 episodes, you will not binge the show. The House of Cards, the first real winner for Netflix, was built on the data analysis of all the things that people were watching and combined it together to come up with a crazy show that mapped to those things that people were watching. Recruiting, Monster, Indeed, Zip have turned the tables. It's no longer about a person interfacing. It's about me presenting myself and making the company pay. And again, and being able to spread out who you can actually touch from a much bigger geographic scenario. We talked about the medicine side with all the wearable devices. We talked about the marketing side, the financial side with Robinhood, and what the Robinhood's data is doing to reduce the overall costs associated with being able to invest in the information that you get that you normally would have gotten from a broker, is now can be provided to you, those trends and the ability to trade very sophisticated financial tools. But we also know the ethical impacts associated with that, with the young man who killed himself because he didn't quite understand the impact of buying and selling on margin and buying futures and options, and then couldn't even read the information he was given appropriately. So this is part of our challenge. And as we've seen this certainly from the retail side. And what's happening is that the speed of displacement for organizations is tightening up. And some people would call this VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And you'll hear a lot of that VUCA term being thrown around as it relates to IoT. So as a professional in IoT, we really want to be able to say to ourselves, how can we handle this? I mean, ultimately, we have to get comfortable with being able to survive in this digital disruption. You should know the tech, but the tech is only the trees. What you really have to understand is the forest. And so the forest understanding is what I was talking about, is system thinking, is understanding and decomposing value. And value is a very deep terminology, a very deep concept, not terminology, concept. There's a whole study of value called axiology, and it takes into consideration morals, ethics, economics, psychology, and it's a very challenging topic. And then adaptive challenges we'll get to as well. An IoT person must think in terms of how, and then more importantly, they got to continue to think in terms of that why, as I keep harping on. So with that said, as you start getting into IoT, one of the change management skills is the fact that you have to become an adaptive leader. And this is what I talk about. And I say, when you look at change management is a very one-dimensional process around technical challenges. If I know what it is I need to fix, and I know how I need to fix it, I'll drive a change management process, and I can manage and monitor that change management process. And whether you're going to use Lewin's freeze and unfreeze curve, you're going to use storming, norming, forming, and performing, and go through the process of wearing your management hat and wearing your leadership hat. It's truly all heroic leadership concepts, the individual leader leading the team. The reality is when you start getting into adaptive problems, and I'll explain those adaptive problems in a little bit, but this idea that you really don't know the answer and you don't know the problem. It's just a problem. You don't know exactly what it is. And there we have to start changing the way we work. And it takes all of us. So it's not just one leader sitting on, the cloud. It is one person that's a leader as a noun. It's actually turning leadership into a verb, an action where we're all leading at different levels. The same as business value analysis. Business value analysis is you're determining value at each level within the organization. And your process of value may be at the tree level, or your process of value may be at that portfolio forest level, but you're still thinking about value in the context of value and what you're doing. The same with adaptive leadership and the fact that you're leading. And this is the key element of this, is that you start thinking in the age of digital disruption that the status quo is an invisible killer. We get so comfortable and so contented, and our brains kind of drive that, because our brains focus on efficiency and it focuses on survival. Our brains drive this, but we have to fight through that, because if we don't, we'll be left behind. So an adaptive leader thrives in the face of constant change. They're looking at the essential and the expendable. They're keeping some things, but they're getting rid of a lot of other things. So you can't, and as you change, you can't carry a bunch of baggage. You got to think about it as if you're a hiker, you got to be able to adapt. So you have to be able to reduce the amount of non-essential things that you're carrying. Never really accepts that that's the way we've done it. Always looking for a change, always looking at how do you change the current state. And then finally, it's applied to everyone in the organization. And so from a status quo perspective, an adaptive leader is looking at, does it work? Is it relevant? And does it have value at each point in that status quo? So Stephanie, is there any questions at this point in time? Any thoughts, comments?
Just a discussion about what does digital disruption mean, and then we're also a little bit about VUCA, making sure we understand that. But I just think it's so fascinating that people are just very much attuned to listening and not chatting so much, just trying to make sure we capture all of the great nuggets of information you're sharing.
Great. Hey, I love it when other people share. They can share their wisdom as well. That's how we learn. And so if there's anything out there, don't hesitate to share it out. So thank you, Stephanie, for that. So going back to this idea of technical problems and adaptive challenges. So why is DX and IoT so different from a typical technical wave? Because typical technical wave is purely a technical problem. I know what my problem is, and I know the solution. I might have to find somebody with the skills, but I know what the solution is. In adaptive problems, you don't know what the problem is, and then you must learn and test to find the answers. IoT and digital disruption creates a bunch of adaptive problems at all different levels. And to get a little bit closer into it, you can see this now. The technical problem is a clear problem definition, is a clear solution, an authority figure can make it happen and manage and monitor it. And basically what someone says at that top box is, I can drive what I can see and what I can do. And that's where heroic leadership, this idea of the monitor management of a team, can still operate. And it will operate forever from a technical problem standpoint. Now when you start getting into the quasi-technical and the quasi-adaptive problems, and you get into a pure adaptive problem, what you're getting is this idea of how much do you have to learn, where do you have to learn, and then who has to do the learning and who really makes it happen. At the pure adaptive problem, all the learning, all the solution happens at the doers. This team of doers. And this team of doers, this is what's happening. I work with others. It's critical. I work with others to find what is yet unseen and execute in a fog around skills I might not have. Now, if I would say that to you, you might freak out. No way, nobody can work that way. Well, the reality is that we're all going to have to work that way. And then we're working together as we learn, we adapt, we figure things out. And because we don't quite know what exactly is going to happen with that data we're given. What type of business model are people going to react to based on what is going on? If we think we know, that's when we get ourselves in trouble. So what we're really getting at is the fact that adaptive problems usually tie back to changing mindsets and beliefs. So here's what happens. In technical problems, I change my behavior and I change my action. It's a technical problem. Instead of configuring it this way, I have to configure it that way. Instead of using this technology, I use that technology. Instead of following this business process, I'm going to follow that business process. I'm going to change my actions. I'm going to change my behaviors in using those systems. Now, an adaptive problem means I might have to change somebody's mindset. And I'm going to dig into this more in a couple other examples. But one of the primary mindset examples would be, all right, a IoT digital transformation challenge was the live virtual training. Happened to a ton of people. It really happened to the certified Scrum Master market. Initially, before COVID, all certified Scrum Masters had to be delivered physically. Poof, COVID happened. You either make money or you change, digitalize. So they digitalized. What nobody saw was the fact that global providers could actually come in with their cost structures and deliver a CSM class where there's a huge market demand still and reduce the price by 50%. That's exactly what happened. The price of certified Scrum Master training almost overnight went from $1,200 to $600, $500. Now it's settled in around $895. But this has changed. First off, instructors that were comfortable only teaching physically had to adjust the mindset that they could provide their learning objectives in this environment properly and feel good about it. They had to change their mindset. Then companies had to change the mindset around what makes a good instructor. Does it really matter if it's somebody from Pakistan or from, or from the UK or from Australia or New Zealand, if they spoke English and could be understood? Where is the level? And also, CSM is not necessarily an art and a science. You learn some things, you take a 30-question exam, and then you get the certification. So how much do I really want to spend on that? Have I overinflated the value of something that is needed but is easy to get? So these are all things that happen in the adaptive world, which caught all of them by surprise. Nobody was prepared for it. And it's affected a number of businesses because of that. So ultimately, with these adaptive challenges that occurs in the digital transformation, we have to start getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So the first quote I talked about was status quo's invisible killer. So I would hope that you keep that in your mind as you start thinking about that related to your career, related to any part of your current life, always trying to evolve and adjust and not be left behind. And the other thing is, in order to do that, we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So what we're doing is we're learning how to think and see a problem, not just learning how to do or fix a problem. So Stephanie, you popped in. Do you have any comments, questions at this point?
Yeah, there's a couple interesting comments out here. First off is, how is this related to the chaos theory? And can this be related to the chaos theory? Excuse me.
Well, I think what we're saying is ultimately going to get to the point where all systems are going to fall apart, right? And I think that's how us as human beings think we can control that, and that we can't. And going back to movies and science fiction, I love it because, Jurassic Park and the mathematician talks about it. You can't control it. It will do something. It will morph. It will adjust. And what happened was the males turned to females. They just stopped. They used the frog DNA, which was an amphibian. I mean, I know it's a story, but in the context of human life, you're never going to know what's going to happen. But that's also what makes the human mind so beautiful, is that we can get that contextual art of why something occurred and figure it out. And that's what AI can't do. And I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But yeah, it ties very well together. Adaptive basically says we're going to constantly continue to move to a more rapid pace of change and adjustment because we can't control the progress of time. Now, something could happen that throws us back into, another portion of throw away some of the stuff that's feeding the speed. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but Yeah, there's connection between the two, absolutely.
Great. And then there was a little comment like, how is it that Zoom was ready for this new way of doing online training and meetings?
Because they had the mindset and the belief. They saw it. Now, here's the skinny. Your mindset and belief and where you're seeing the market, you might be too early. So what you're doing is you're hanging on loosely till it's ready for you. And this is the thing. I mean, some of these skills you might not be able to use for another 3 or 4 years, but you have it before anybody else has it. And I was doing ASPE, Gina can tell you, we were doing virtual training in 2009. Everybody thought we were crazy. We were doing SDLC, software development lifecycle virtually, and half the instructors didn't want to do it. I almost had a revolt on the business analysis side of the curriculum because they thought I was absolutely insane. And it was a struggle, but man, it was awesome to do. And it ultimately turned out to be the right thing to do. So yeah, it means you've got to understand that you might always be too early, but in some cases with VUCA, too early is actually not a bad place to be, if that makes sense.
Yep, great, thank you. And that was it for the questions. There's George.
Yeah, David, there was a guy that I heard about that went to Wayne State, and he actually got a degree in machine learning. And when he graduated a few years ago, he couldn't find a job. I mean, there was nobody looking for anyone with expertise in machine learning. Now, I mean, he can't, I mean, he can get any job he wants.
He can make $300,000-$400,000 a year as an engineer because it's scarcity principle. Absolutely.
But based on what you were saying, he was ready. He was doing something long before people even thought it would be worth doing. And he was in a position that, and so he had some foresight, I guess, vision of how things could be in the future. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but also he's testing. Like, here's what I would say to you is that you want an adaptive leader, and that's a whole other presentation we'll get into in more depth, George. But your example is very correct in the fact that an adaptive leader is going to test different things. And they're going to see what's working, what's not working. And they're going to have incremental metrics. And sometimes we're going to go down a path and you go to a certain level and it's not going to be exactly where you need to go. So what we have to do is we just can't throw all of our chips into one basket or throw all of our chips on the table for 5 black. We got to spread it out and then watch and adapt and adjust. Just so happened that gentleman did that. And it was the right thing to do. But a lot of times, if we go all in on one, it could be a significant mistake. So we want to go across the board a little bit, learn, tighten up, go across the board on that tighten up, learn, and then keep moving forward. Like when I tested virtual for SDLC, I did it for one class. I didn't do it for the whole curriculum. I found one instructor who believed in it, tested that class, went to the next class, and went to the next class. But when we do that, we begin to see the future because we get closer to the future. But ultimately what we want is that story is we're now at the point where this thing's going to work, and we're the earlier movers. In a lot of cases in today's marketplace, the earlier movers can have a little bit more success for a little bit longer time. So now, giving you an example of the technical versus adaptive problems, I'll give you 2 great examples. First is weight loss, and the second is work from home. So weight loss, I'm a big guy. I've probably lost about 400 pounds over my lifetime and gained 450 pounds, maybe 480 pounds. So I've always struggled with it. And what happened is when I started looking at my weight loss issue, I realized I was attacking it from a technical standpoint. I was doing Weight Watchers, or I might try Nutrisystem, or I might try counting calories, or I might try walking and exercise, or I might try drinking water, apple cider vinegar. I was trying all these technical things. And when I really broke it down, it was a mindset issue. I have to change my mindset. And one of the first mindsets I had was I like to eat. And so with time discounting, I value today more than I value tomorrow. I just want to eat, so I don't really care what's going to happen to me 10 years from now. So I have to adjust my mindset around liking eating, realizing the impact associated with that, realizing also that when I was skinny, I was a little bit more neurotic. And my mindset was rather be fat and happy than skinny and neurotic. But then, do I want to be alive? So as I realized my weight loss struggles, I realized it became shifting my mindset. And as you start struggling with digital transformation and the business models, what you realize is that you have to get a different mindset. And that mindset will then change the actions and the behaviors, but you're going to be doing that in a fog, meaning people are, unless we see, we don't believe in a lot of cases. So that testing helps to show some level of belief. Now, the other more insidious one is working from home. Before COVID, working from home was an adaptive problem. Some of you did it, some of you didn't do it. Only certain positions did it because there was a lack of trust and a lack of belief that you can work from home and be as productive. Magically, COVID makes work from home a technical problem. You either did it or you died as a company, or you didn't have a job. So heroic leadership, your IT people jumped at it. They got the systems in place, the security in place, and lo and behold, most white collar workers, knowledge workers are working from home. But my question is, did mindsets really change? And my answer to that is no, I don't believe all mindsets have changed. So I believe that after COVID, a bunch of us will be asked to go back to work because the belief is you're more productive at work because I got to see you. The mindset hasn't changed. So that's another example. That's where the behaviors go back. It's one of the examples of knowing something's an adaptive problem that keeps bouncing back. So we wanted to talk about this. George wanted to put the two elements together in his presentation. We wanted to talk about IoT so you understood it from a technology, but we also wanted to talk about how you have to deal with the disruption that IoT can cause. So, and we'll get into that more a little bit later too, as it relates to the learning you have to do. So the state of IoT today is confusing. Because remember, it's not just one piece, it's multiple elements coming together. So as you search, you have to understand the value of why you're going to bring these multiple pieces together to provide the solution. And what happens is the vendors have been impacted first. And these are our hardware vendors, and then even the processor vendors like Intel, like NVIDIA. Like NVIDIA is a really hot processor company right now because they're doing a lot of the work in the smart car arena. And so you get the processors and the vendors. And then after the vendors start doing their thing, then the service providers are impacted. The Accentures, the Deloittes, the other Microsoft service providers and solution providers and Cisco solution providers. And then enterprise IT gets impacted. And then finally, the users start to get impacted. So there's this kind of channel. So as you start looking at potential ways, you want to be looking at what are the vendor technologies coming out? What are the vendors talking about? Where do you see some of those trends? And as business analysts, we do have to start thinking in terms of, looking at our solutions as products, and they have life cycles. And then how do we connect those products together? And ultimately, what are the changes in those products? We have to start thinking about it in terms of competitive analysis. So this is the picture. When you look at the picture of IoT, it's the whole layer 1 through layer 7 of the iOS model. You have the physical layer technologies, you have the bandwidth, you have the internet working technologies, then you have the application layer technologies on top of that to ultimately give us a service and ultimately say, hey, here's what you can do at what's got. And so the component levels where your sensors are going to be. Then your sensors are going to hook into routers, and then the fog applications may be devices that are able to switch the traffic between what's high priority traffic and low priority traffic. Now your internet, that's why 5G is so hot right now, because 5G can allow for more data to go across the wire where there isn't physical data infrastructure available. It's amazing, the capabilities. Then you're absorbing that data into a server that processes it, then you have all the data management systems, and then ultimately it's serving up to us. A great example of this is going to be how Salesforce is going to work at the service level, all the way to what type of data it's collecting with its integration with Marketo at the point that people are attacking your database and your website. So George, you popped your screen on. Do you have anything you want to comment on this slide?
Yeah, this kind of corresponds to the presentation that I saw today from the University of Florida. It's a AI future of AI, and what was interesting about it was that the presenter stated that at the bottom of this stack, there's opportunities and money to be made, but he showed where at the top of the stack, that's where a majority of the money is going to be made.
I would actually tell them that the vast majority is at the top of the stack. So what I like to say is that the plumbing of the internet's been George Jetsonized. Even if we move to quantum computing, basically all we're going to do is we're going to replace boxes within a cloud. So like 1% of IT is going to change those boxes because it's either going to be an AWS employee, a Google employee, or a Microsoft employee, Microsoft Azure, who's going to change the boxes in the cloud. The value is in what you're delivering. That's why we have to look at it and why you are delivering it. What's the information that you can do that you can help your customers connect with you better, stay with you more time. Now there's some sensor opportunity. Exactly right, George. And that's why business analysis and IoT becomes so important, because we got to get away from it being this crazy technical stack. We can't be scared about this because most of this is already here. What we really need to be scared about is this slide. This is the slide, map to your DX world. So the left hand, your customer experience. Sometimes we call this CX. And this is your sales and marketing. So where can you use IoT to gather information to get a better understanding of your customers? So this is your end users within your organization. So what are they doing? How are they using their systems? Financial performance. You may be able to get closer to your customer is going to reduce the cost of acquisition. It's going to reduce the cost of deploying systems if you're using internal stakeholders. And remember, don't get confused. You can use this map for both internal stakeholders of internal systems and external systems. Those that a product manager might work at. So if we're business analysts, your customer experience is the users of that ERP system, or the users of that CRS system, or the users of that inventory control system. So getting to know your customers better. Customers and people lie. That's Dr. House. If you watch the show House, everybody lies. But he proved it. Nobody wanted to tell them the truth, and he could heal them. It's crazy. Well, your customers don't. Your internal stakeholders don't tell you the truth. What will tell you the truth is that you capture the actions and the activities you're doing on a daily basis. Financial performance. If you can learn that and you can make their jobs more effective and efficient, you will increase productivity. And then how do you touch those customers at what point? So this is really getting into relevance and awareness. So how can you use IoT at the CX level to increase relevance and increase awareness? Awareness of what your customers are doing and relevance of the systems that you're giving your customers. At the middle slide, that's your OSS, your operating support systems, your business support systems. These are your operation processes. This is where automation comes together with information. How can you provide critical information that the organization needs to have to make decisions, and how do you automate business processes? And now what should be scaring you about this in the back of your mind is what jobs are going to replace the jobs I replaced with this automation? And we'll get to that a little bit later, but that should be something that's resonating in the back of your mind a little bit, that starts to develop some of the ethical questions associated with this type of topic. So that's that part. And this is where business analysis can play significantly, because you want to increase productivity. So you want to look at where you can use data to automate critical work functions. And then where can you add that in the process? Where if you can automate the systems for self-healing, you need to have a call center or a certain team that's out there managing that from a physical standpoint. And then finally, and to me, the biggest element is your business model. This is where your product management comes in, or this is where your organization on the sales and marketing side, but really this is more product management. How do we make money? So one example I'll give you on this is the wearable company I used to work for called Revive. So Revive, we had a wearable device that was for focus and attention, and it would vibrate to keep kids attentive. So if they had ADHD, there's a way that they could self-manage. Now, the business model for this device was endless. We could give the device away for free and charge just for the data. We could give the data away for free and charge for the device. We could give the data and the device away for free and then sell the data that we are collecting to people who want to use that data to grow their businesses, whether it's a pharmaceutical or a digiceutical organization who needed our ADHD data to do trials for their drugs, or to see the movement associated with these kids that have ADHD and how those kids are affected before medicine or after medicine. There's so many ramifications that this is what causes people challenges, because we have to be able to learn how to test the different business models and be comfortable testing these new business models, because we don't know what model is going to work. And I'll give you a great example. For me, LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn has a wonderful business model to start selling insurance, employment insurance. So as digital transformation starts to blow up, we are all going to be focused on trying to reskill. and some of us are going to be able to show ability to reskill better than others. LinkedIn can use an algorithm to analyze our how much learning we had, what our references say about us, our recommendations, our job, and be able to offer insurance policies to each one of us based on our past histories to get career insurance to protect us for when we get disrupted. So it's an interesting business model that they can turn into based on the information that they're collecting and run a very profitable business from that. But that's a different way of looking at the world. So Stephanie, you popped in. You have any question or comment you want to make?
The stacks, the 3 stacks, which one are people mostly focused on, and which one should they be focused on?
That's a great one. I would say most of IoT is on the operational processing side. It's about automating the internal systems, and I would say, I think it'll be focused first on the business model. I'm always a big person that says you have to understand how to make money and why you're going to make money. And then I would say number 2 is the customer experience. Okay, I'm going to try to make money this way, so I got to see if I can make the customer experiences as strong as possible. Then I'll automate the systems based on what's working. What usually happens, we automate a system because it's there and we realize nobody's using it anymore. The most inefficient thing to do. It's crazy. Yeah, so I think right now we've had it completely backwards.
Makes sense.
So when we really think about IoT, you have to become a student of data. It's all about data. And so when you start looking at data, basically, data doesn't lie. You want to collect it in real time, and you want to collect real data, and you want to collect this data in places you can never collect it before. And then don't waste money collecting it in places where you shouldn't collect it. Then what data does is it begins to let you see things and see things that you might have missed. Because here's what happens. Human beings, we make a lot of decisions based on our intuition. But data doesn't need to be intuitive. Like it finds connections that are non-intuitive. You would have never thought that. Oh, I would have never thought that. Oh my gosh, wow. And it's because our brains are typically wired to use very stereotypical heuristic patterns to make decisions. So data can help us break some of those stereotypical heuristic patterns by proving it. Well, look, this is why these two relate. Intuitively, we would have never thought about it that way. So ultimately, decisions, whether it's a person or a system or both, you're acting with smarter, you're acting smarter, you're acting more efficiently, and you're making decisions based on not only what you bring from an experience perspective, but what is going on around in the world about you. And this is the story of data. And remember, data can be corrupted. Data can be misused. Data can be, you might not be able to get enough data. There's got to be context. And as you get into data analysis, what you start realizing is the context is as important as the information itself. But what makes data beautiful is it's got no transactional limits. It just grows and grows, and its value continues to grow. And then you get this idea of the last bullet, which I love so much. Its value increases when you combine it. This is where matchups come up, where you can bring this part of data together, that part of the data together, and show things. This is where multiple regression analysis comes up. This is where correlation of data comes up. The value is in bringing all these pieces together and start looking at different things. Again, that non-intuitive ability to be able to see things that you would have normally not been thinking about, but you still have to have an open mind to say, have those aha moments. And as humans, we have major limitations to the amount of data that we can process. And that ties back to a lot of cognitive distortions that we carry with us. But again, this centers on the fact that the machine still has to process a lot. So in order to make this AI thing happen, so it can start being able to make a certain amount of decisions like human beings can make, you need a crap ton of data and data from a ton of sources and the systems to hold that data. And you need a ton of processing power to crunch and smash and pound that data against algorithms and teaching systems that you get with AI and deep learning. So when you start getting into AI and deep learning, we really don't have true AI right now. So there's no Skynet, there's no Wiki. You watch Person of Interest, there's none of these type of AI systems. There's a new AI show out right now as well. But we have the ability to help machines learn. But they don't learn through cognition. This is what, when you look at AI, we think, we process, and we come up with correlations, and what we do is we do deep thinking. And this is what's happening today is our society doesn't let us do as much deep thinking as we should. This is why you should take time to think, you should process information, and there's this epidemic of busyness. But basically, people, we think deeply. That's our power. So we use less data, but we use a ton of context, subtext, value, understanding, cause and effect, and we come up with whys. We can process the why. That's why this is happening, and make decisions associated with that. Machines process deeply. So they need a ton of data, they learn through patterns, and they don't do context or subtext. They don't answer the question why. They'll just say this pattern tells me that this will happen next. Or based on everything that's been inputted into me, this is what's going to happen next. So that's where we are with machine learning and deep learning. We're truly not at an AI type situation where the machine is making that context, subtext, why definitions. The information now is based on patterns. So with machine learning, we're teaching the machine to learn, the system to learn, then we're showing it and teaching it. We're showing it some more and it's learning more. And then you increase the fidelity of the output based on the machine learning. But you still have to have what we call supervised versus unsupervised machine learning. If you use an unsupervised machine learning system, you might get some outputs that are less than desirable. And there's been a number of examples about that. Now, deep learning, you get less intervention. You don't have to do as much of the learning, but you're using more math and more algorithms to mash together to process. But the problem is we don't have the processor speed necessary to have the neural network of computing systems necessary to have the levels of algorithms working together to be able to process the learning that is necessary. So deep learning is available, it's there, but it's not quite there yet. So as we talked about, machine learning, the system, you're teaching the system to learn over time. You got to keep showing it, keep learning, and then that machine will learn, and it learns through pattern recognition. So kind of as a overall summary, machine learning uses algorithms, learns from the data, more telling, retelling, less processing. Deep learning, they're structured algorithms, layers upon layers of processing algorithms. And then more and more processing, more reprocessing. And then what you want to be thinking about in this whole context is, what if the data's wrong? What if it's corrupted? What happens if someone breaks in? What happens if there's a breach? And then ultimately, what type of processing is going to be necessary to get less and less interaction with that deep learning? And then what can those neural networks come to be able to satisfy the why this is happening? Because you still have at each one of these systems a final step where you have to interpolate and you have to act on what you're seeing. These are the patterns. I can make decisions for you, but then you have to decide what you're going to do about that in the long term. So, why you want to get excited about this, some key statistics. I know I got to end at 8 o'clock, and I'll probably end a little earlier than that. But some key statistics, and I would just look at, you look at NVIDIA stock, you look at GE stock, it goes going up and down. You look at what the transformation they've been doing as an organization. You see what's going on in the automobile world with regard to technology and the technology adaptations and adjustments, and you can really see, where this is moving. And then you can look at it from the job side, the cloud computing jobs increasing, not just the cloud computing jobs increasing, but also the data science jobs increasing as well. And if you look at it from a technology standpoint, even though applications are where the money's at, there is going to always be these infrastructure networking changes. It's one feeds the other. As one grows, it will surpass the other. Then in order to keep growing, the other's going to have to grow and surpass that. It's like this constant circle. It's just at the bottom end of this circle, it's just about replacing boxes. It's not as many hard skills anymore. The hard skills, the real value is at the application layer. What's going to happen is ultimately that's going to become self-fulfilling, and the real value is going to be at the decisions that you make with what you got, and where do you input that capability. You can't spend all your money doing this for everything. And ultimately your technology evolution, and you'll get this slide that you can look back on, what is infrastructure 3.0? Right now I'd say it's a lot to do with application development. It's a lot to do with processing quantum processors and hardware design engineers, the security and the encryption technologies to make that happen. But I love the right side of this is that, infrastructure 2.0 was how do we connect the world? Now it's really how do we make sense of all the information that we've got? And then I would say to you, what do you do with what we got? And what are the skills we need to do something with what we got? And ultimately, because of IoT, it affects all of us. So there's nobody immune. Everyone's impacted. There's no industry that's protected. There's no worker or work skills that's immune from this change. So this kind of gives you a sense of where some of the jobs are that we've been talking about. But it's going to affect HR and HR analytics. It's going to affect financial analytics. It's certainly increasing and creating this whole data science, data analysis job field. It created this whole new machine learning, deep learning configuration and programming skill sets, and the tools that are being wrapped around that, the impacts and growth of business analysis, because what we have to do is define why we are doing this. And that's where the business analyst fits so well. But the business analyst is also going to have to change their mindset around the creation of value, the interpretation of what systems you have to do and how to attack it. Instead of attacking it from the process, the middle section, you're attacking it first from what can you do and why should you do it. Then you're attacking it from how to make the customer experience better and what data to get. And then third, you're attacking it from fixing the system and automating what you can automate. And then some of the jobs that are available and some of the job growth that's going out there. And certainly on top of it, we already know the new jobs, but these are some of the incremental jobs within organizations. Account managers and sales are going to have to change, specifically in vendors and service providers. Solution architects, both external and internal, are going to have to change in how they look at providing solutions and opportunities for people and how to use the things that they've got. So I'll end it with 4 slides, and we'll go pretty quick here, Stephanie, unless you wanted to make a comment real quick.
Nope, we're good. This is great.
All right, so finishing up here real strong, and at the end here, so you can get back to our lives, and you can stop listening to me go on and on. So finally, as human beings, the first thing we have to look at to attack this is the power of unlearning. So think about this. A doctor is faced with a complete refresh of information every 5 years. So do you want to go to the doctor who decided not to learn this information and carry on with their experience of 25 years? Or do you want to go to the doctor who's learned how to drop that 25 years of experience to focus on the last 5 years? With me, I want the latter. I want the doctor who's focused on the last 5 years. And this is what we have to start thinking about. Way too often, we carry the baggage like Jacob Marley and the chains around his waist with all of our experience, and we see that as valuable. And I know it's hard because we made a big investment in building that value attribute. But now we have to realize that value attribute may be the thing that's holding us back. So how do we learn how to unlearn? That's a very powerful skill to look into and develop as part of getting comfortable with change and thriving in the world of change that IoT and digital transformation presents. The next is being able to regulate being comfortably uncomfortable. Learning happens in this productive distress phase, that area. And as we think back to our best times at work is when we had a high level of psychological security, we felt empowered, and then we felt like we had responsibility, where we pushed aside the concept of learned helplessness, where we allow things to happen, we were actively engaged. And it might have been hard, but it was also exciting. That productive distress is where we learn, where we grow, where we adapt, and where we push ourselves. At the yellow levels, I used to talk about this a lot when I owned the company. I would fall asleep because as an owner, there wasn't many people who could push you. So I was always looking for people to push me so I wouldn't fall asleep, so I wouldn't get comfortable. And even the organization, they get frustrated if you're trying to push. Like one of the jokes at ASPE is they used to call me the taking tree, like the giving tree, the little boy, the taking tree. I would just take. But my thing was, we had to constantly be at this productive distress. In training especially, we're only as good as where the change is going, and we can't get comfortable. So my goal was to build a culture where at least they could enjoy and have fun within that comfortable distressed network or that comfortable distressed environment. But this is a hard thing to process because ultimately we want to be comfortable. But being comfortable puts us at risk that would be harder to get out of if we keep ourselves constantly uncomfortable. Now, how do you tactics to do this? The more conflict, the more positive conflict, the more cognitive diversity you bring into a system, the more productive distress you're going to create, as long as there's a positive connection and it's managed appropriately. Giving people more responsibility is very important. Stretch assignments. When you see the heat is on too much, you drop back to solving technical problems. Like you might get really stressed out at work and all of a sudden you find yourself organizing your house or fixing something because you're moving from an adaptive problem to a technical problem. Like you might clean your desk at work when you're really stressed out because that's a technical problem. There's a problem, you know it, there's a solution, you can fix it. So your mind's going to go back to that because it's a calming mechanism. You can employ some structure, you can reclaim some responsibility from the system itself, but these are some techniques that you can use. And it ultimately comes back to the fact that we really learn when we're uncomfortable. And I have to relearn training. I've been in training for 25 years and it's always been about the smiley sheep. I'm like, I got to relearn because the maximum value I can give you as a training manager and somebody who's in the business of training is to get you to be uncomfortable so you can build those skills up. But how to do that without having you walk away and not pay for it, that's the dichotomy. It's those that can be just comfortably uncomfortable that can survive and thrive in this disruptive period. And the biggest thing for learning and the biggest thing with dealing with disruptions is not thinking. It drives to our conditioned brain to focus on preset heuristic patterns to operate in the busyness epidemic. You got to find time to cognate. You got to find time to think, to process information, and put that information into your subconscious. And with that, I'll stop. Hope I haven't taken up too much time and pass it to Stephanie so we can get you on to enjoy your lives.
Hey, we've enjoyed our lives this past hour and a half. This has been great. So we had a couple comments. John had made good points, which tied right into your last slide, which really talked about decompressing, sleeping, taking time to think. So it really just, emphasizes the need to work hard.
Oh man, I love what John was saying. Yeah, John's got a couple of really good comments here. I wasn't looking at it. The security image challenge, John, that's exactly right. There's a lot of things we're doing to help Google systems learn. Google was also the one with the facial recognition software that screwed up for the unsupervised ML. But yeah, the sleep is so important. Yes, we've taught ourselves to be, constantly busy, and that's important. It's not. It's the worst thing we can do for deep cognition. It's actually affecting our ability to solve complicated problems.
So with that, does anybody have any questions? I think we've answered all of them that were in the chat board.
I did. I just had one quick question. I don't want to take too much of your time, David, but it really piqued my interest when you started talking about value. So I guess my question is, do you have any general recommendations or suggestions?
I got a great recommendation for you. If you started getting fired up about value, if you go to a company called The Great Courses, so the company's called The Great Courses. They have classes on CD, classes on video. There is one called Questions of Value. It is amazing.
Okay.
The professor is absolutely incredible. Now he's an agnostic, he's an agnostic professor. So if you're a person of faith, just kind of ignore some of the stuff he gets into. But ultimately, he goes across the board. You get into a discussion of the value of a human life. Actually, the National Safety Transportation Board created the value of life at $200,000 in 1970-75. And so Ford used that number when it made its decision about the Pinto. The Ford could have fixed the Pinto, but they didn't because the cost of fixing the Pinto is more than the lawsuits based on the value of human life.
Wow.
Yeah, and so you start getting into these wild conversations, but taking it pragmatically, we have to get away from building what we think people need to building for value.
Right.
That's the key in business, whether it's internal or external systems. It's starting to build based on value, not based on need or want.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Awesome.
but the questions of value, man. I forgot Patrick something or other, man. I listened to that thing like 3 or 4 times. I loved it.
Okay.
Like if brains in a vat. If you knew you were in the matrix, would you value it?
Yeah.
I mean, pros or cons.
Right.
That's
Right.
getting more esoteric, but anyway, don't mind.
Thank
Right.
you.
You're welcome.
That was a great question. So, David, could you advance your slides? I think you have some other great information that we could flash towards people.
Yeah, the one I will show is this one. So I'm a big proponent of this class, the Adaptive Leadership 2-day program. Pat reads an expert sheet, and adaptive leadership, as you start sensing, has evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, and behavioral economics in it. And Pat is actually a psychologist. Then she moved into the field of criminal justice. Then she got into agile transformations, and she's just like a second level expert to the primary experts in adaptive leadership, and she just happens to work with us. And so this class is just absolutely amazing. And you might not think it's pragmatic, but there are some serious pragmatic skills that could be built off of this to help then deal with and think through the challenges and the opportunities that digital disruption offers.
Right. Definitely have to check that out.
Anyways, that's it for me. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Other than this was a fantastic presentation. I mean, there's so much to think about. I'm looking forward to going back through the decks and just digging back in, and definitely going to reach out to get some more information. This is
great. I hope everybody had value, because that's what it's all about. I certainly had the blast presenting it. It's a fun topic, that's for sure. And I appreciate the opportunity.
well, we appreciate having you. George, did you?
I just want to thank David for the presentation. Very, very interesting and very informative. Thank you very much, David.
George, thank you for the opportunity. I very much appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So with that, once again, we thank you so much, and we look forward to our next opportunity to hear from you and spend time together, and look forward to talking to you soon. Okay.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you, team.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
folks. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, David. This was awesome.
Thanks, Michael.
And then next, before we start wrapping up for the night, we're going to have Naresh talk about our upcoming activities and chapter events. So with that, are you ready?
Yes, Stephanie, thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can. I'm sorry. Yes,
Okay.
yes, we can hear you.
And thanks, David, for such a beautiful presentation and sharing so good information with us. So our next events, like as we were talking before as well, like our coffee breaks on our every Friday. So we have coffee breaks at 8 a.m. And every other week, we are focusing now on our business data analytics series. So now the next topic will be data storytelling. So we are focusing mainly on the business data analytics topics, just like data storytelling, predictive and prescriptive analytics, embedded analytics. So all those kind of things we are covering there. So it's every other week. And the next part is for our December meeting. So it's our special December meeting on business analyst in agile world with Angelo Calibella. So yeah, that will be in December. That will be on December 8th. Yeah. So these are our upcoming chapter events.
Great. Thank you so much. And yeah, tonight's meeting was great, David Mantica from SoftEd, and we definitely look forward to hearing your next topic, Naresh, on the BA coffee breaks, and of course next month's. And did anybody have any questions, anything that they wanted to talk about tonight before we wrap up tonight's chapter meeting?
Stephanie, real quick, this is Morgan. The BA coffee breaks, are those recorded? I have a meeting usually at around 8. So will this be recorded so we can go back and watch them?
Yes, George right now is working on editing some of the ones that were just held, and they'll be available, and I'm certain he'll probably send out some links. So yes, even if you can't attend them, you'll still be able to listen to them on demand and all of that.
Awesome.
That's correct, George, right? I just want to.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, there's some great topics there. So Thank you so very much, everyone, for joining us tonight. And we appreciate all of your time and effort in attending and participating and sharing with us, and look forward to seeing you on Tuesday, December 8th for our special December meeting and any and all of the upcoming coffee breaks. So thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, just to add that session that's coming up on the December 8th with Angelo, he is an excellent presenter. So you want to plan to join and invite others to join as well. He's called Angelo the BA. So he's got some pretty interesting things. We're going to have him not just for December, but we're looking at having him in January to talk about how to acquire and look for that next BA job. So I'm talking with him about that, and hopefully we can get him on board again in January to talk about, for those people who are looking to get into either transferring into a BA role or finding that next BA job. So he's going to be talking about that in the January session. Okay.
Okay, great.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And we appreciate your time and spending time together, and hope you have a great evening, and see you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.